Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to our Monday Mastermind. We've got an amazing topic today. As a matter of fact, this topic is one of the number one topics I get asked when I am talking to real estate agents. And so we're glad to have Donnie Morrow here. But before we get started with him, we are Grow Global, and you can be a part of our Grow Global group. You can jump in every Monday at noon Eastern time and hear different stories, different trainings, different topics on what's going on in the industry, how to up your game. You can even go to our website, whygrowglobal.com, and you can go to events tab and you can see the next upcoming events. You can scroll down to the bottom and you can click and see all of our past Grow Global Monday Masterminds and rewatch them. A lot of times we'll have agents that say, hey, I couldn't get on the Monday Mastermind, but I want to hear the topic. So they'll go in and they will watch the recordings. And so we get that a lot. And so we're building this massive archive over the last few years, tons of topics, tons of ways for you to grow and expand your business. So when you get a chance, go to whygrowglobal.com, check out our website, get familiar with all the tools and resources that we have available for you. And this is open to any real estate agent, not just agents with our companies, right? Any real estate agent wants to come on here and get the information and learn. We're here to help the industry as a whole. So on to our speaker today. Now, this gentleman, I met him a number of years ago, and used to be with Remax when I met him at Memphis, Tennessee. I was me and a buddy of mine were meeting him at a coffee shop. I believe it was a Starbucks, and was talking to him about our company that we're with and how much fun we're having. And he says, "Nope, I'm really happy with Remax." Until a year later, he wasn't so happy with Remax. He decided to come on board with our company, and we've had an amazing run for a number of years. He has a mega team, Donnie, how many agents do you have on your team now?
We're right at 60 after we just started a bunch last week.
Nice. Because he had a lot of agents when he came on with us years ago, but it has grown dramatically and his numbers are through the roof. So if you want to learn something, learning it from somebody who's doing it, that's the best way. So one of the biggest topics I get questions on is listings. How do I get more listings? What do I do for listings? How do I break into that listings market? This guy's the expert on that. So I'm going to have Donnie share with you his expertise, his notes, his trainings on how to do it the right way. So Donnie, you want to take it over?
Sure. Thanks for the intro, Rob. Yeah, I've been at VXP now for 4.5 years. And it's been awesome. 5-time icon. Just got my notification. I made icon again last week. So that's been super exciting. And yeah, it's been awesome. So we're enjoying it for sure. All right, a little bit of credibility about me. He already mentioned that I had a team. Up until 2019, I was in production just like everybody else. I do still sell 10 to 20 houses a year myself. But nowadays, I spend the vast majority of my time helping my agents be successful versus going out and selling houses. But I still do the training for my agents as well as coaching and that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely still training these same things. So this class is a super simple class. I keep everything super simple. I'm really big on that. And when you train a large number of agents, you find that it has to be super simple, right? Because they always come up with what ifs if you don't, when there's a whole lot of them. So this is the exact same thing that I teach my agents. More importantly, though, I listed 109 houses in 2018, and this is the exact same thing I was using to list those 109 houses. And by the way, I can't remember the number now. I either sold 94% of them or I sold 94 of them. I can't remember which one it was, but I wasn't just listing houses. I was selling the houses that I was listing as well, okay? So I'm going to go through pre-qual a little bit here and how I pre-qual the listing appointments, but I do want to clarify first before I get into that. This is not Mike Ferry. Mad respect for Mike Ferry. He's great. I don't use the pre-qual to go out there and say I'm not going to go on an appointment, all right? Now, did I have some stipulations in my business when I was listing 100 a year that I didn't run out to every appointment? Of course. Most of us aren't at that point. I recommend that you don't turn down listing appointments unless it's really out there, unless you're selling at least 50 a year. maybe even 100, depending on your business model, what your situation is, what your bandwidth is, that kind of stuff, right? So I'm not giving you this information to start going, well, I had 5 set, but Donnie told me a pre-qual and I didn't go on any, and now I don't have any listings. Don't do that, all right? I go by the theory of, would you rather go on 2 listing appointments and take 2 listings and make $20,000, or would you rather go on 5 listing appointments, take 3 listings and make $30,000? I'd rather go on the 5 and take 3 because I made 50% more money. Yes, I know I was a little bit less efficient. You can worry about that in the future, unless you're already at that point, and then by all means, you can worry about that. Okay, so I just want to clarify that. So if I'm not using this to rule out listing appointments, what am I using it for? I'm using it to prepare myself for the appointment for a couple things. Number one, I do want to be able to do a great CMA and be prepared properly for the seller. I want to be able to do my homework. They deserve that we do a great job for them. And I want to be in the best position to be able to get my listing when I get there as well. So I'm not wasting my time and I am efficient. Number two, I want to know a little bit or not about whether they're realistic or sane. So there is a point there where obviously I might turn one down at this point in my career, the appointment, but for the most part, I didn't. So for instance, if you're talking to a FSBO and they're like, hey, you can come out, but I'm not planning on listing. Are you going or are you not? I'm going, okay? But I'm still going to use my pre-qual to be prepared to go on that appointment. And you would be surprised how many of those appointments with FSBOs, because I built my business on FSBOs and expireds and SOI and Zillow, how many of those that I went to that told me, hey, I'm not listing. And I felt like I was in the house 15 minutes and they're like, we're not listing, but if we were going to, what would be the next step? Right. And I'm like, got them. Okay. So I'm glad I didn't rule those appointments out, obviously, and I'm glad that I went on those. Okay. So a little bit of a preface on the whole scenario around the pre-listing appointment. This is all super easy. I'm going to share it with you. It is not fancy at all. And honestly, I'm probably talking a little long because I'm scared it's going to be done in like 15 minutes because it's not that earth-shattering, but it is very, very effective. So I'm sharing my screen so everybody can see it. Notice it's not branded. It's not pretty. Guess what? Nobody ever sees it but me and my team and now you all. If you want to make it pretty and brand it, then by all means, if you feel that's necessary, go ahead and brand it. I don't personally brand it. Okay. It just doesn't need to be there. So when I'm prospecting or calling seller, or I might pull this up if my SOI calls me and I start talking to them about selling their house or whatever the case might be, I have my scripts in front of me. Whether you like scripts or you don't, you should use them. Okay. Now, yes, it's okay to make it a template and change some words around and make it your own and all that good stuff. I believe in all that. But you definitely need to have this in front of you until you get it memorized. The other part I want to tell you about this is if you're new, when you start using this, you might get pushback at first. A lot of times when agents are brand new, they use this. They're like, people aren't answering my questions. They aren't doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's okay. You're going to get better. We always kind of blame it on the client and think that it's their fault for not answering the questions or thinking they're a jerk. They're not. It is us. We aren't comfortable with the scripting yet. Therefore, we don't come across as confident. So then they give us pushback on our questions, right? What I found is when I was brand new, people give me pushback. Once I got 6 months in on using this, I start thinking to myself, like, I can't remember the last time anybody gave me any pushback on pre-qual or answering any of my questions. It wasn't that the market changed. It wasn't that the clients changed. It was that I changed because I was always role playing. I was prospecting every day. I was setting appointments every week. Therefore, I was using this pre-listing questions, using these every week, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, that applies to pretty much everything in your business. If you do it at a high level for 6 months, you'll probably get pretty good at it. So be aware of that. Don't get on the phone tomorrow and call, set an appointment, and then use this and go, that Donnie guy was full of it, man. Nobody wants to answer these questions. It's okay. You'll get better. Just keep going. Okay. So I promise you, this has been highly effective for me. I don't guess I can promise it can be effective for everybody, but it's been highly effective for me. So I do this while I'm on the phone. As soon as I set the appointment, I literally say something to the effect of, hey, Rob, man, I'm super excited to come see the house tomorrow at 3. I want to make sure I do a great job for you when I get there. So I'm going to do my homework today before I come over. Do you have time for me to ask you about the house? What am I doing? First of all, I'm setting him up and letting him know I want to do a great job for him. So immediately he's going, oh, cool. This guy's going to do his homework. He's going to do some research before he comes over. He's going to invest something in me. So immediately they think of me as a professional. By the way, if I'm competing with 2 or 3 other agents and they don't do that, which one of us now has the advantage? I already have an advantage just because I took the time to say that I was going to do my homework and that I wanted to do a great job for them. I already told them that. Now, keep in mind, if you walk in with nothing after saying that, they're going to think you're full of it and you took a step backwards. So make sure you do your CMA and you do a good job on it and you take time to do it properly. If you use RPR, wonderful program, but also do some research and know what you're talking about. Don't just say, I'm going to do my homework and then walk in with a packet that you printed off of RPR and you don't know anything about the comps in there, because I'm coming in with notes and letting them know that I looked at every description and I looked at every photo for every comp, and I can tell them why the comp has less value than theirs, why it's equal to theirs, or why their home is worth more than that one, or that comp has more value than theirs. Okay. So I always loved competing against people who just printed something off of RPR and the sellers would show it to me. And I could always say, wonderful. They printed something off of a program. How did you feel about that? Well, it was okay. I understand. I would feel the same way, but let me let you know what I did. And here's the real comps that I looked at every picture, every description on, so that I would know how to properly price your house versus just printing something off of a computer. I think I won 100% of those listings, by the way. Okay. So be prepared when you tell them that you're going to do their homework. And when I share my screen, Rob, I cannot see my time, so I'll try not to go too long.
No,
So
you're fine. You got plenty.
yeah, when you tell them that you are going to do your homework, then do your homework for them. The other, and I'm trying to give y'all some extra clues in here on how I listed a lot of houses. You may already know most of it, but I got enough time that I can do that. I recommend you do the CMA the day before. I don't recommend you get up on Wednesday morning, you got a listing appointment at 1 o'clock. I know it's a great excuse to not make your calls because you got to do the CMA, right? You can't show up without doing it. Well, do it the day before as part of your admin time so that you don't miss out on your calls to set the next appointment. Because depending on what your average commission is, you could have cost yourself a lot of money by not being prepared and doing that CMA ahead of time. That was my rule. All CMAs were done the day before, even if I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Like no matter what it took, because I wanted to get up the next morning and be able to produce more appointments, right? That's all about that consistency to be able to do that. Okay, you can also practice this. It is okay to, and I know like these are simple old school techniques that most of you have all heard before. I'm just telling you how I did it, okay? I had role play partners all around the country that I went in Facebook groups or maybe something like a Grow Global group or whatever the case might be and said, hey, I'm looking for a role play partner at 7 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Wednesday, who's available? And the reason I got multiple partners, I typically would have at least 3 for a week because I knew 2 of them wouldn't show up. So if I had 3, I would at least get to role play with somebody that week, okay? In an ideal world, you would probably have somebody different 5 days a week. That way you'd probably get 2 or 3 actual role play sessions in because the other ones aren't going to get out of bed. The more you practice this stuff, the better you're going to be at it. And the sooner those clients are going to be willing to answer your questions. Okay, so I set the appointment with Rob. I immediately went right in and told Rob I was doing my homework, set myself up for success there. And then I jumped right into my questions. So Rob, tell me about your house. So I don't ask the second part of this, the flooring, bedrooms, bathrooms. I don't ask that at first. Those are joggers for me in case Rob doesn't remember those things. All right. And here's why, because some people are a high D like me. And I say, hey, Rob, tell me about your house. And he goes, oh, it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's in pretty good shape. What else you need to know? What do I now know about Rob? I'm just using Rob as an example, by the way. What do I now know about Rob? He's a high D. He is not an analytical. He is a straight to the point kind of person. So not only am I gathering information about the house while I'm doing this, I'm gathering information about the client as well. And by the way, I am not an expert at this profile. I can identify a really high D. I might can identify an SC. I might can identify a really high I, but I'm not like, oh, he's a DIS minus C squared. I can't do all that, okay? None of that, but I can do enough to know whether or not they're an analytical or they're not an analytical. That's if I really break it down to my simplest terms. So by the same token, if I'm like, Rob, tell me about the house. Oh man, it is great. It's got hardwood floors. It did have green shag carpet, but my little chihuahua did not like that carpet. It made her sneeze. And she's gray and she's 11 now, but she's still in really good health. So anyway, I took that green carpet out and I put hardwood in it because of my chihuahua. The yard is beautiful. It's got zoysia grass in it because I didn't like that old Bermuda. The tree was growing. The Bermuda would turn brown. It wasn't pretty at all. So I put all zoysia in so that it would grow. And the one bathroom is pretty bad, but the other bathroom I renovated. I put these purple towels around the shower with flowers, and the flowers are yellow, and it's just awesome. And the sky is blue over the house. The driveway is concrete. Like, what are they? They are a serious analytical. And by the way, make sure you plan plenty of time for that particular appointment because you're not going to be in and out in 30 or 45 minutes. You're going to be there for a little while. Take your patients with you that day when you go to that. Okay, but y'all get the example. My very first question, I have a pretty good idea who I'm dealing with. And that does two things for me. Yes, it helps me at the appointment. It also helps me during the pre-qual questions. Because if they're really a high D or in a hurry, I'm going to get through these as quickly as possible and just get my answers. If they are super talkative, highly analytical, then I'm going to try to talk to them as much as I can within reason, within my schedule, because they're making a friend, because they love to talk. And the more you let them talk, the more they're going to like you. And they love me by the time I even get to the front door in that scenario. Okay. And oftentimes it will be maybe your people who are a little senior. They might just be a little lonely. But you know what? You should win most of those appointments because the other agents aren't going to have the patience. They aren't going to recognize it. And they aren't going to give those people the time that they're looking for. All right. So that's my initial question. Now, if they just say, oh, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, that's it. Or even if they describe it a little bit more, these little things, flooring, bathrooms, bedrooms, all that is stuff that I use to kind of jog it out and make sure there's anything that I want. And I might say, if they do a pretty decent job, but I'm still a little curious, is there anything else that could affect the value either positively or negatively? I always say positively or negatively because I don't want them to think I'm trying to ask them what's wrong with the house, right? Because they might have renovated it and didn't mention it. They might have put a new roof on. I know that new roofs don't bring it up to value, but I'd rather have a new roof than not have it, right? I know they don't necessarily increase value, but an old roof would definitely decrease the value. So I do want to know that. And I might even add the part about, hey, is there anything positive, negative, or different than what I might see online? Because where a lot of us going to go to, we're going to go online and look at those things. By the way, while they're talking, we have a system here called MarData. Some places call it courthouse retrieval. There's probably other names for it around the country, but it is essentially an aggregate site that pulls tax information, mortgage information, past sales, all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing for me that I'm looking for is square footage on there. And you notice that's one of my jogger questions. We definitely need that. I'm also looking for beds and bathrooms so I can confirm that stuff. And I look for red flags. Has anybody here ever looked up a house on courthouse system? Y'all probably won't really be able to raise your hand or whatever, but think to yourself if you have. And it says something like 2,000 square feet, but then the people say, oh, it's a 5-bedroom. Well, typically, if you got 2,000 square feet and a 5-bedroom, you've got pretty small rooms. And by the way, I see Tony raise his hand. Tony, if you would save your questions till the end, because I've been in these before and people start trying to answer the questions and then they just never get through. Appreciate the question, but and I'll be happy to answer it after I get done. I just don't want
question.
to.
It's just doing the raise the hand thing that you had said. If we can
Okay,
raise our hand.
perfect, awesome. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're with us, man. Love it. Okay. So if I notice discrepancies, like it's a 5-bedroom, but it's only 1,800 square feet, this gives me a chance to ask about that because you don't want to show up of 1,800 square feet comps, but find out that they finished a huge area of the upstairs and it's got an extra bonus room and a bedroom and it's really 2,600 square foot and you have no 2,600 square foot comps, right? Even things as simple as that or will affect that, or vice versa. If I see a 3,000 square feet and 3 bedrooms, while I'm on the phone with Rob, I'm like, Rob, I see online, it looks like the tax records show us 3,000 square feet. Is that accurate? Yeah, that's about right. Okay. it says it's 4 bedrooms. Is that right, Rob? Because you got some extra rooms, or you got some really big rooms. And they'll usually kind of laugh a little bit. And I go, yeah, I've done this before. I am tooting my own horn a little bit, because not only have I shown them I'm going to do my research like I told them I was going to do, I'm doing it while we're speaking, and I'm showing them I'm smart enough to pick up on stuff and ask for it. I have no problem tooting my own horn and going, yeah, I've done this before, man. That's why I recognized it, because they're already going, this guy knows what he is doing before I ever get there. They're like, wow. Okay. So you want to clarify that info to avoid walking into with bad comps. By the way, why did I start doing that? Because I walked into some houses with bad comps and I didn't ever want to do that again. You have to be able to pivot really quickly when you're like, oh, I grabbed the wrong forms off the printer. Let's just use the computer and look them up together real fast. Okay. You got to be able to adapt when something like that happens, but hopefully we can avoid those questions for you all. All right. Sometimes when I ask about the positive or negative value, I might say like any train tracks near it or anything like that, because they may very well conveniently leave that out. And hopefully your courthouse retrieval system or more data will show stuff like that under. So when you pull it up, you kind of already know there's train tracks beside it. Why am I asking them to point that out? Because I want them to know that that's a negative. So when it comes to me pricing their house appropriately, and I'm not going to say anything about it right now, I might just be like, hey, it looks like there's the train tracks are behind the backyard. Or how close is that train? Oh man, it's pretty close. It comes by 27 times a day. Okay, cool, right? But now I know we're probably going to have to adjust that price downward, but I'd rather know that before I set the price of sign listing paperwork instead of after I sign it and start getting feedback that's like, well, we would have bought the house, but the train blew our eardrums out. Okay. So be aware of that. All right. On to question number 2. I know they just told me about the house. In my area, we're kind of a poor metropolitan area here in Memphis, and we don't necessarily take great care of our stuff all the time. So usually if we go out and show buyers houses that are under like 250, 300,000, like the entry level homes, they're going to have some rotted wood and stuff. They're not going to be perfect, right? And that sometimes happens in higher price points as well, or whatever the case might be, but it's pretty common for us. We also have a ton of humidity. So therefore, we also end up with rotted wood. And of course, nobody teaches people that maintenance is important on their homes. So even though they just told me all about the house, I'll say, man, it sounds like a really nice house. How would you rate the home from 1 to 10, with 10 being like a new home? Seldomly do I get a 10. They just told me all these amazing things, how great their house was. And then they go, oh, I'd rate it a 6. Well, that's a red flag. I want to know that before I go on that appointment, before I do my research, because they just told me all these great things. And I'm like, well, what would it take to make it a 10? Or why would you rate it a 6? However you want to put it. I like saying, what would it take to make it a 10 versus why is it a 6? And they'll go, oh, well, the outside really needs a paint job. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. Are you planning to do that before we go on the market so that I can maximize your value? I'm telling them that I want to maximize their value. You almost can't tell a seller too often that you want to maximize their value most of the time, unless that's just not their goal. But most retail sellers, that's their goal. Okay. And you want to know whether or not they're going to do any repairs when you go in. Because guess what? If the outside needs paint, how much work does the inside need? It probably needs work as well. How you do one thing is how you do all things most of the time. Okay. So now I know the inside's probably going to need a little work as well. So that's why I say, well, are you going to do that for me to be able to maximize the value? Because they go, oh yeah, whatever you say I need to do to get the most money, I'm going to do it. I'll knock it out. Thank you. Praise Jesus, right? Because you want me to get you most money, but you're willing to participate. What do some of them say? Oh no, I don't have any money to be fixing stuff up. I'm probably going to have to sell it as is. That means we're going to be on the lower end of those comps. And that means I got to be prepared for that. Also, it means I don't go in and give them a big fat list after I walk through the house of all the stuff they're supposed to fix, because they already told me I don't have money to fix it anyway. How many of us are doing that? How many of us are walking into a house and saying, hey, it's got to be my way. It's got to be in great shape and all the repairs done, blah, blah, blah. And then we sit down and give them this big list and blow them out of the water. And they're like, this person wants me to spend $5,000. I ain't got but 17 cents in my bank account. Okay. So you see where all of these questions are going. That's what would make it a 10 for. If you're going to get pushback, usually starting around number 4 is where you get pushback. Where are you moving to? You might get a really strong personality that's like, what's it matter where I'm moving to? Does that affect the value of my house? You just need to be able to back off, y'all. Don't sweat it. If it comes up, you're there to make a friend. You are not there to argue with them. By the way, if you're calling FSBOs, don't argue with them about commission over the phone. Okay? You'd be surprised how many FSBOs that I got that would go, well, if you bring me a buyer, I'll give you 1%. And I'm like, oh, cool. So you'd work with me if I bring a buyer. Now, am I taking 1%? Absolutely not. The contract was going to say 4. Okay, I was going to negotiate and try to get 4%. But am I going to argue over 1% on the phone? Absolutely not, because if I try to argue over 1% over the phone, I'm never even getting my foot in the door. Okay, I'm never going on that appointment if I try to argue with a FSBO over the phone. Most of the time, you should be surprised how many of them go, thank you so much. Most realtors would argue with me when I tell them 1% because they're only worried about their own commission. Guess who's not getting that listing? Okay, so I'm giving y'all some little side tips here as well. All right, so where are you moving to? If they say, why does that matter, or something to that effect, or does that affect the value of my house? You know, Rob, it really doesn't affect the value of your house. I just try to get as much information as possible to make sure I can do the best job possible for you. It's really not a big deal. When would you like to make your move? And I go on to the next question, and Rob doesn't think anything else of it. He's like, okay, cool. But if I argue with him about it, it's only going to go downhill. Okay, it's never going to go uphill if I start an argument because I want them to answer my question at that time. So be aware of that. I teach my agents to always have a back out. No matter what they do, when they ask any question, when they recommend something, try your best to always have a back out to where you can lighten the mood a little bit if something comes up or they have an objection to something, okay? So always keep that in mind. Again, why do you need to practice this and why will you be better in 6 months? Because of things like that. Same thing, when would you like to be there? They might give you, well, does it matter when, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the thing, Rob, I'm pulling very current comps that are important in today's market. I'm trying to think of a word now, but I'm accurate in today's market. And if it's going to be 3 or 4 months before we go on the market, those comps might change. It's not a big deal. I just like to be prepared for you. Okay. Again, just a little back out so I can say, hey, man, I'm just trying to do a great job for you. All right. Here's the next one. What price do you have in mind? Most people are not rude about this. By the way, if it's FSBO or something, you probably have the price because it's probably advertised online. If it's expired, you got a general price. So you have something there. But if it's just somebody that's different from that, or you're cold calling or whatever the case might be, what they usually will say is they give you a price, or they will say, well, you're the expert. I'll let you tell me when you come out. Okay. No problem. If they say that, say, absolutely. That's why I'm doing my homework, so I can get you the most accurate price possible. And I'm sure you are planning to list it at a price where it actually sell, right, Rob? You said you wanted to be in Florida by August. So I know you don't know a price, but you're planning on listing a price where we can get you to Florida by August, right? And get them to kind of get back into agreement with me. I want to keep my rapport going. I want to keep them saying yes to me, keep them in the mood to work with me, all right? So after whether I get a price or I don't, I'm going to go for my net sheet, because again, I'm telling them I'm doing my preparation for them. So I'm going to tell them why I'm asking the next question. I'm asking, what do they own it? Do they have a mortgage? So that I can do a net sheet for you. And if you want to add a little more so that you'll know what you actually walk away from the table with at closing or something like that, what do you owe on the home? Some people will tell you, some people will not. Some people don't know. If they don't know or they won't tell you, perfect. I'm going to do my net sheet as if the house was paid off. You seem like a really smart guy, Rob. I'm sure you can subtract the mortgage from it yourself. I'm going to toot his horn a little bit. I'm going to stroke his ego a little bit and tell him he seems like he's a smart guy, right? Like, hey, you seem like a smart guy. You can figure that out. I'm going to bring it about the mortgage on there. Okay. No big deal if they don't want to give you that information, anything like that. So Rob, before I come over, are there any other questions you have while we're on the phone? That's, just, I always give him a chance, because he might, well, do you do open houses? Well, do you want me to? Right? Like, I want to know, like, hey, do you want me to do open houses, or do you not want me to do open houses, or whatever? If he asks about open houses, there's a good chance he wants you to, but there are some people who ask about open houses because they don't like them. So you do have to be careful with that question. If they say, do you do open houses? Another great option is, that is something I discuss with my clients at the listing presentation. We can do it. We will do a marketing plan that works for you. Okay. I put it back on them. I'm working for you. We'll do a marketing plan that works for you, but I've got it on my list for us to discuss tomorrow. And I'll put it in my notes. that we're going to discuss it tomorrow. By the way, little side note, I use a CRM for everything. Okay. And I like to think of myself as the king of follow-up. I may be wrong, but I like to think I'm pretty decent at it. And that's why I sell a lot of houses. Everything that I've said throughout all this, when I've asked them questions, I've been taking notes in my CRM. As detailed as I can do. It may not be spelled right. I don't care, because I don't want to slow them down when they're talking. It may have some shorthand in there that nobody else can read, or that I can barely read myself later on, right? It's probably going to say like 4 BD, 2.5 BM, right? For 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2.5 baths, whatever the case might be. RR might be railroad tracks. FL might be Florida, right? Whatever I can do to keep up, I'm going to have really, really good notes. So when I go on the appointment, I'm going to arrive early. I'm going to park around the corner. I'm going to pull my app up. And this is really important if you're a high producing listing agent. If you're going on 5 listing appointments a week, you don't want to walk in and be like, so Rob, you wanted to be in Florida by August. And you're like, no, dude, I'm moving to Nashville. Again, ask me how I know, okay, how that happens, right? So I take really good notes in my CRM. I get there 10 or 15 minutes early. I park around the corner. I pull up my CRM app and I read Rob's notes before I walk to his front door, so that I know what he told me about the house. I know if he wants to do repairs. I know if he is a high D, or if he's super analytical, if he's got a puppy, if he's got kids, you know, if anything's been renovated, where he's moving to, when he wants to be there, what he owes in the house, etc. Okay. So taking notes is really, really important for your conversion on your listings. Now, number 9, I put if needed. Don't say to the client if needed. That's not part of the question. That's why it's capitalized. Okay, it's not part of the question for the client. It is for you. It is what I call the $1 million question. So remember back here on number 6, not everybody would tell us what price they had in mind. You would be surprised how many people will answer number 9, even if they don't answer number 6. And when they answer number 9, I now have the answer to number 6 as well. All right. So, but notice I don't put it right after number 6. I put some stuff in there to break it up a little bit and make it a conversation and not an interrogation. Because if I put this right after question 6, they're going to see right through it. But if I break it up with questions 7 and 8, and we have a little conversation, I can always come back and go, hey, Rob, I got one more thing, man. If you were going to win $1 million for guessing correctly, what do you think a buyer would pay for your home in today's market? Even though he wouldn't answer number 6, like 90% of the time, he's going, man, they'd probably pay $460. Okay. Now I know at least some idea, and not everybody, but it's pretty high percentage. You'd be surprised how many people would not bat an eye and will answer that question. And then you have your price. I like to have the price if at all possible, because you do not want to walk in there with a bunch of comps at 300 grand if they're thinking it's worth 450. Sometimes it's that way because they're just completely off the mark. But you'd like to avoid that. Here's the deal. What if it's a family member who called you and it's not a FSBO, hasn't been expired, so you have no idea what they want for it, and you don't ask this question? You don't want Easter dinner to be awkward because you told them their house is worth 300 and they thought it was worth 450. I want to know that information going in, because I want to be able to at least soften the blow a little bit if that's going to be that kind of situation. All right. All right. And then the last thing I do is I usually say, hey, Rob, I want to send you a confirmation email over. Tell me your best email address is. And then I shut up and they will answer the question. That is neuro-linguistic programming. It's NLP, and I'm not an NLP expert, but I'm pretty good at that embedded command. Okay. Tell me is the embedded command your best email is. That's how I get his email to send my pre-list packet. I do have a pre-list packet. I don't send comps. I don't want them canceling the appointment because the comps aren't what they want them to be before I get there. It is a pre-printed packet that talks about me, because I don't want to talk about myself when I get there. I want to talk about them and their goals and their wants and needs and desires when I get there. So I send them the pre-list packet ahead of time that does talk about me. Also, when I send that pre-list packet, I might say, hey, Rob, I'm really looking forward to meeting you and Kim tomorrow at 3 o'clock, because I want him to know that I want Kim to be there as well. I have attached some information for you about how I get my client's home sold for absolute top dollar that you can review before we meet. I want you to review it before we meet, because I want to already be sold to you when I get there, and I sell houses for top dollar, and I want Kim there. Okay, so that's the exact email that I've sent to like thousands of listing appointments over the years. Okay, so that's kind of it. That, like I said, I tried to make it long enough for y'all to get plenty of value out of this. It's probably a 5 or 10 minute process in real life, unless somebody is just really a talker and really giving you a lot of information that you may or may not need. But in general, that's how I do it. There's probably some questions, and as far as I'm concerned, I'll answer questions about anything that y'all want. I'm not necessarily limited to this topic, but that's how I pre-qualified listing appointments and listed a whole bunch of houses and sold them that way.
Very cool. Hey guys, do y'all have any questions for Donnie? I mean, this information is golden. Agents would pay a lot of money at big, expensive training companies to get this kind of information and this kind of script. So what kind of questions do we have for Donnie on listings?
Man, Donnie, you did everything in that very first question, which I love, finding out exactly who they are, what they are. The simple, your next door kind of question was awesome. Love it.
That's right. So Nick has a question. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, Donnie, thanks so much for all that information. I have an a FISBO lead, and he's a truck driver. He's like never at home. He's really hard to like communicate with over the phone. He's like trying to sell his property for over a year. He's not really interested in working with a realtor, but he said he's open to meeting me, but it's just like it's difficult to meet him. How would you go about, and I'm a new realtor too, Donnie, so I've never worked with a FISBO before, and I haven't even had a listing yet. So any tips, tricks on how to get in front of him and convert him to a client and as a listing?
Yeah. So funny thing is, a lot of times when my team comes to me and asks me scripting questions, I usually ask them a question and they usually don't know the answers. So I think in this situation, you got to ask the right questions. You got to know when he's going to be there, what's his motivation. Because if he's not motivated and he's busy when he gets home because he's a truck driver, you're never going to get there. So first of all, you need to know his motivation. Second of all, if you can figure out his schedule, like, hey, I work by a calendar. I'd love to go ahead and get you locked in on my calendar to make sure I have some time for you next time you're home. When is that going to be?
Sure.
Right. So you got to find out when he's going to be there. Otherwise, you have no chances of doing it. And I think the third thing I would add to that for him, super patient. So when we all want instant gratification, right? We're all human first. I tell my agents that all the time. I know we're all human first. Okay. When I listed 109 houses, I still used a paper calendar at that time. I use a Google Calendar now, but like Kim, I also carry a notebook everywhere I go and take notes in it all day, every day. Okay. So on that calendar, every Sunday, I had the list of all the people who had verbally committed to me or who had signed paperwork with me, but we were not on the market yet because we were either waiting for them to get their house fixed up or maybe waiting for their kid to graduate school next month so we get on the market after they get out of school, whatever the case might be. And I kept up with 15 to 20 or 25 of those people all year. Like I'd never had an empty pipeline. So I think he's one of those people. He's probably not one of those 20 that's on the A list, but it sounds like he's on the B+ list. And it may very well be a long-term game because he's just a busy guy. He's not home much, etc. So I would really start digging in as to when he's going to be there, what's his motivation, and what is important to him about actually selling the house.
Perfect. Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it, mate.
Yes, sir.
So we've got David and Tony that have their hand up. David, you want to ask your question right quick?
Hey, Rob. Hey, Donnie.
Hey, man.
Yeah, you got good information.
Thank you.
Just come and say you're doing great. Had a question, like when you list like family member or people you know or close friend or past client, they want higher price to waiting for people maybe make an offer, or they're ready to make an offer, but because the list price so high, you cannot really have any showing on it. What would you recommend me? If you with me, how you come back and approach them to?
Yeah.
Get the price
So
right.
first of all, I treat family members the same way that I treat any other client as far as trying to get them to the right price. Because this really comes down to a pricing question. What are my pricing objections? How do I handle pricing objections, right? There's several of those there. I think it starts with the preparation. It starts before you ever go on the appointment. The little things, like I said today about, hey, you'll price it at the right point. It goes all the way into pulling the right comps to setting those expectations at the listing presentation. And if your listing presentation is designed around getting them to the point that it gets them to the right price. I use a version of an old Mike Ferry listing presentation, which I think in the beginning, every other coach in the world ripped off and changed a couple words and called it their own or what have you. Mine does have 3 or 4 things that I got from multiple different coaches to put in there. And then I think it's knowing your pricing objections as far as whatever is important to them as to why they want a higher price, going, well, hey, how do we get you to price? You know, with my marketing, if anybody can get you that price, it's probably me. I believe in what I do. But what am I going to tell the appraiser when he comes out? Because he's going to see the same comps we're looking at. You know, and obviously there's a bunch of those, but you got to know your pricing objections. I would also tell you, when I talked earlier about avoiding the argument, avoid the argument around the price. So I don't go in and lead off with talking about my marketing and my listing presentation. I give the client an option. So do you want to talk about pricing or marketing first? And most of them are going to say pricing, which is what I want them to say. Because that way I know early on if they're going to object to my price. So I can go through the pricing portion of it. And then if they object, I can use a pricing objection handler. If they still object, I'm not going to keep arguing with them, because eventually Rob's like, Donnie, I told you I want 450, right? He's going to get sick of arguing with me. So I don't want it to feel like an argument. So if I give Rob one objection around the price and he says no, I'm going to change the subject. Hey, Rob, I brought a net sheet for you. By the way, this is where the net sheet comes. I don't care if I take them a net sheet or not. Rob, I brought a net sheet for you. I know the money is important to you. Let's take a look at what you're actually going to walk away with. Then I go through the net sheet with him. And then I try to revisit the price again. So Rob, you can see that this is the right price to get your house sold at, right? And this is what you're going to walk away with. Sometimes they'll go for the right price after you do that. What if he's still arguing with me? I'm not going to argue with him. I've tried twice, right? Not arguing. Now I'm going to go to marketing. So if Rob is still arguing, well, Rob, let me show you a couple of things that I'm going to do to get you the most money for your house, regardless of what price is listed at. Right now, I'm going to come back and revisit pricing again. So I do it in a 3-step process. If they won't go to the right price, I have an objection handler depending on their objection that I will use in each one of those. But I'm very careful to not beat them up and try to make it an argument. I'm very careful to change the subject, go to something else and come back to it. Change the subject, go to something else. After 3 times, I'm probably not going to get them there. So then I got to start making decisions, right? Like, is it worth taking? I've been 100% honest with them. Can I get automatic price reductions built into the listing at that point? So once I get to that point, because you're not going to win them all, especially if family members, they're super hard, right? So after I try it 3 times, then I have to start making decisions.
How do you get after you list and have for a while, maybe 2 or 3 weeks for a month, not a lot of showing and no showing? How do you come back to them and get them to reduce the price?
Price reductions. Yep. Price reduction starts before you list it. Again, accurate information, showing them that you did your homework, setting everything up properly from the beginning. It starts with being super honest with them at the listing appointment about things that need to be done to the house, where the house is really going to sell for, reviewing real comps, all of that with them and letting them know. If I decide to take it over price that day, I'm going to let them know that I'm coming for a price reduction. Okay. So I'm going to say, Rob, man, I've told you 14 times it's 400,000. You see the comps. I know you're looking for 450. Look, I'm not God. It might sell. We'll do the 450, but if we don't get the activity we want, and we'll know in the first 10 or 14 days, we're going to need to discuss this again. Is that okay? 99% of the time, if they like you, they're going to go, okay. And then you can come back and have that discussion. The other part of that is, if you don't give feedback and get feedback for them, and you don't talk to them and communicate with them, good luck getting a price reduction in 14 days. Good luck getting a price reduction in 30 days. I took a lot of expireds that said, oh, I had to call my agent after 60 days to see if we were still in the market because I hadn't heard from them. Okay. So if you don't communicate and that kind of stuff, again, nothing's perfect, but I just know I've got to set myself up for price reductions from the very beginning and all along the process, because if I'm not doing those little things all the way through, when it comes time for a price reduction, I can't get it. I have a very big team. We have a lot of staff. We have great staff. We don't pawn all the communication to the seller off on our staff. Our agents still communicate with our clients even after we list them. And this is one of the reasons why, because too many big team leaders want to pawn everything off to their staff, which is great. It's good for their time. I get it. I understand the business model. I wish I could adapt it. I just can't get myself there. Right. But then when they call for a price reduction, the seller's like, I wasn't reducing my price for him because the only time I heard from him was when he wanted me to reduce my price. And the other time it was an assistant calling me. And now it's expired. Donnie, you're here and you're listing it, and I'm listing it at the right price now. So all of those things combine for that. Last thing on price reductions, when you go for the price reduction, you need to make it their idea. You cannot call them out of the blue and be like, hey, I told you we need to be at 400, Rob. You ready to lower your price yet? That is not going to work. It is, hey, Rob, you know, we talked about pricing when I met you, and we gave the 450 a try. And like I said, if anybody can get it done at 450, it was me. But I was very honest with you. Have you thought about making an adjustment yet? Yeah, I've thought about it, Donnie, but cool. Now I got something I can work with, right?
Right.
Now I can work with him like, okay, cool. Tell me your thoughts. I want to get him talking now. Telling isn't selling. Getting him to talk and learning about him and caring about him and his wants and needs and desires is selling. There you go. So that's a very, very quick price adjustment class.
Perfect. Hey, Tony, you had your hand up.
Actually, Donnie already answered it, so that's why I lowered it.
2 for 1.
Thank you, Tom. I thank
You're welcome, sir. Look, David is in my market too, man. Don't be competing with my agents of all this now.
That's right. That's right. Anybody else have a question right quick? Hey, we did have a question in the chat if we could upload that sheet to the Wide Grow Global site so people could download it.
Should be fine.
Sounds good. I'll get Julie to reach out to you for that.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I can send it to her.
Nice, nice. Anything else on listings? Anybody?
Yes, a text someone asked me to ask Donnie that if they forgot, you know, like they forgot to talk about the price adjustment, and now it's like a week into the listing, there was no showing. Can you please ask him how do we when do you address it to the seller? Okay.
When it's a week before the listing's going to expire?
Well, no, it's like a week into it and then there was no showing. Let's just say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're pricing it, even if you can't get it at the price you want, the closer you can get to being within your price at one price reduction is very smart. So when I said after 3 times of trying to get a price, you got decisions to make. One of those decisions is, if I can't get Rob to 400, how close can I get Rob to 400? So maybe we split the difference at 425 or whatever the case might be. Why do I do that? Because the lower I get it, or the closer I get it to the real price where it needs to be, the better my chance of having showings. The more showings I have, the better my chance of getting price reductions. It is very difficult when you don't have any showings or anything, any feedback, nothing to get that price reduction on, because then they think, oh, we're just not even getting anybody to look at my house. Right. So then you've got to overcome that. So it becomes much more difficult, where you've got to be reassuring them all the time. Hey, I'm working on your house. Right. Like, I may be texting my seller twice a week. Hey, I haven't forgot about you. I know we don't have any showings. I'm running another Facebook ad today. Right. I want them to think, hey, I haven't forgot about you. I know we hadn't had any showings. Can we hold it open this weekend? Hey, I haven't forgot about you. I know we don't have any showings. I've reached out to my whole team and asked them to go through their database to see if they have any buyers. And we have 90,000 buyers. See if any, and we do have over 90,000. You can only say that if it's true. Okay. So we have over 90,000 people in there, and we're going to see if any of those people might be interested in your house. So I'm giving them little things along the way so that they never, ever think I'm not doing anything.
Right.
If you're not showing them that you're doing something for them, it's very, very hard.
Very nice. Nick, you had another question.
Yeah, I did. Donnie, I've got I purchased some listing leads, and I purchased them, but have not replied once. And I've texted, I've emailed, I've called. I've been consistent, like at least maybe 2 to 3 times a week since I've got the leads. I've had them for like over 3 months now. Haven't been responsive. Do you have any like types of tips, tricks, or something I could whack out of the park and go, I send them this and maybe I'll get a response or something you might have?
those leads are very difficult to buy. As a team, we don't buy tons and tons of seller leads. I don't want to discourage anybody because some of them will convert, but just know it's a very low conversion on seller bought leads most of the time in most sources.
Okay.
I'd be curious if they were like Z buyer or how the lead was generated. Was it generated with like a cash offer or an instant offer? Because that's how most of them are generating it. And which a lot of times means if you're approaching it from I want to list your house, you're approaching it the wrong way because they never wanted to list their house to begin with. They wanted an instant offer. So if they're like Z buyer or something where it's an instant offer, you need to be calling with, hey, I heard that you were looking for an offer on your house, not, hey, I'm a realtor who wants to list your house. So look at the way those leads are generated and see if you can adjust your approach.
Yeah, I'll find out how they're generated. Okay, that's good to know. Thanks, Tony.
And that's a good way to get them to pick up the phone. If you leave a message, I heard that you're looking for an offer on your home. They'll pick up the phone quicker than just, hey, I want to list your house. That's a good tactic.
Tape blue painter's tape that comes off easy and write a note. I heard you were looking to sell your house and tape it on the door with a lot of tape. Don't make it hard on to get off. Make sure it's blue painter's tape, but make it to where they can't miss it. So
I like that.
Sell your house.
Very cool. Tony, you're up.
I was just going to give the damn suggestion about the blue painter's tape and the sign because I do that all the damn time.
Oh, perfect.
There you go. Proof of concept, right?
Proof of concept. So I am curious. Go ahead, Tony.
Another thing I also do is I was going to say I'll like kind of walk around the neighborhood, usually kind of closer towards like 5, 6 o'clock, and have like little cards out and, like prospect canvas the whole damn neighborhood and just knocking on people's doors until like, especially if I know that I've got a couple in an area there and try and see if I see them driving home and then go hit their door up if I got that sort of lead.
There you go. Yeah. There's
stalking,
no
but
wrong
it's
way to
okay.
make contacts in real estate.
Right?
Love it.
Hey, quick question. I know Donnie's got to run here in a minute, but I'm curious. You touched on this earlier, but what does your daily schedule look like?
Now or when I was listing a lot of houses?
When you were listing a lot of houses?
When I was listing a lot of houses, it was role play and admin in the morning from probably, depending on how much admin I had, either 7 to 8 or 6 to 8. I got on the phone at 8 o'clock. I called for 3 hours a day. Then I did another admin time to be able to set up searches, get something to eat, preferably answer all the phone calls and emails and texts and all that came in while I was on the phone. And then I had probably lunch and then another admin slot. And then I had appointment slots. So my schedule was like 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And then multiple days, if I knew my daughter had guard on Friday night at the football game, obviously Friday, the last appointment was at like 3 so that I could make it to her guard game, right? And then I tried to fill in all my appointment slots as they went all week. And then when I got in at night, I worked as late at night doing the paperwork and the contracts as I needed to.
Very cool. Guys, this is great information. This is what you would get at a high-end, top-level training. Tony, you have another question?
Actually, I was going to say the green frog tape is also another good thing to use if you don't want to use the blue, if that coincides with your marketing better to where you're keeping yourself branded properly.
Good idea.
Very cool. Well, hey, thank you, Donnie, for sharing all that information. We're going to have this recorded. So if you want to send this to some of your agent friends, it'll be in our whygrowglobal.com website. You can go and pull the recording and send it out to your agent friends or watch it again if you want to. But we got another Monday Mastermind next Monday at noon. So don't forget that and invite all your agent friends to it. And Donnie, can't wait to see you at the next event.
Yes, sir. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.